The biggest story in finance goes down tomorrow. But is this all a part of Wall Street's secret plan to take over Bitcoin? And is MSTR potentially a proxy that we have never seen before, with the United States government going to use them for the Bitcoin Strategic Reserve? We're going to go over all of that. But first, we need to go over the big news that is going to be going down tomorrow, folks. Tomorrow, we're having the all eyes on Microstrategy as they could potentially join the S&P 500. This Robinhood analyst said, quote, there is a good chance that they could join the S&P 500, and it would be one of the largest publicly listed, quote unquote, crypto companies. Now, after Coinbase and Block to join the S&P 500. People are saying, oh, look at this. The stock jumps. It's being so great. But I'm getting messages left and right saying, hey, you know what? MSTR looks like it's going to fail. The stock is going sideways. What the hell is going on with MSTR? Now, I'm not worrying for one, but it's unique of what we are seeing here. And the control of what we have over MSTR just from all the publicly traded companies and the big dogs now is what is interesting. And I'm going to be covering all of this. So make sure you guys are hitting that subscribe button for me right here, right now. Do it while you can, because the S&P 500 could be denied tomorrow because of the recent pump. Now, I have on the thumbnail here that there's a 91% chance, or some analysts have said that, and we're going to go into who those guys might be here in a second. But it's essentially got majority of its earnings from Bitcoin. So we've never seen a company like this before, even though after that FASB ruling, of course, we expected to see a lot of differences and, changes in the overall accounting, right? I mean, that's what the whole purpose of this rule was. But the Q2 earnings essentially gave more earnings than the past 3 quarters combined for MicroStrategy. So such a giant jump up, it might be raising some flags for a quote-unquote wait-and-see approach, right? But having a U.S. domicile and deriving the majority of its revenue from the U.S., it's listing its security, ideally the common stock. It has a market cap rating in the 85th percentile. It's trading a minimum of 250,000 shares. But it's ensuring the sum of the most recent 4 consecutive gap is positive. But the final obstacle remains. At the end of the process, a committee whose members are not publicly known manually approve this. So the committee could vote, and, if we've got some college football fans here in the crowd, we all know the committee could always spark some controversy no matter who you've got. So potentially entering in on Friday will be absolutely massive for Bitcoin. It would change the game dramatically. I mean, look at what we've already seen. We've got 100 publicly traded companies with Bitcoin on the balance sheet just listed out here that all have over 66 Bitcoin. But overall, all publicly traded companies are now above that Satoshi mark with 1 million coins on the balance sheet. And now with that, we have 184 publicly traded companies now holding Bitcoin on the balance sheet. So why is this drastic for that? And we're going to get into who controls MSTR here in a second and how this could be the back door. Don't forget, this is not necessarily good having this much institutional adoption of Bitcoin, right? Because look, we see so many publicly traded companies coming on, but Michael Saylor and MSTR have 3% of the overall Bitcoin holding with 600,000 Bitcoin. So when they get into the S&P 500, well, that gives them a lot of potential passive funds. I mean, 16 billion, like the GOAT here in passive funds, just right out the gate. So now Michael Saylor and that MSTR flywheel that you guys know and love, that I love to show, And if you guys have seen it before, if you're not subscribed, what the hell are you doing? But if you haven't, please hit that subscribe button for me, because the MSTR will issue that debt to buy more Bitcoin. It keeps increasing. The market cap keeps issuing more equity. Well, if you've got $16 billion worth of passive flows just coming in off the jump, straight from the rip, well, that's a lot of Bitcoin they could buy, and they've been continuing to raise and raise more money. So this is from Monday, right? The world's largest Bitcoin treasury firm can join. This move would trigger billions in boomer money to flow into MSTR and Bitcoin. So MSTR would be able to potentially get up to that 1 Satoshi very quickly. Now, why is that potentially a bad thing? I'm not saying Saylor is necessarily a bad guy or anything, right? I mean, we see this MNAV continuing to raise debt, or continue to stay flat while they're, raising more debt. And they keep on buying more and more Bitcoin. Hell, in fact, they've bought literally every single week except for 2 since Donald Trump got elected. Look at this. They started it when the inkling was coming around in November 1st, right? They're like, all right, maybe we'll buy a little bit more. And then the election results come in November 30th. They just go pedal to the metal. Keep on buying every single week. They've increased their holdings by nearly 60% since Donald Trump got elected. Now, Microstrategy would be the world's largest Bitcoin treasury firm. And this move would likely, see that the list of the 500 publicly traded companies, it meets that criteria. And, we had Jeff Walton, punter Jeff, friend of the program, come in and say there's a 91% chance it joins that S&P 500. Now, you guys got me in the comments here the other day. He didn't say this directly. He said that it has a 91% chance to meet all of the criteria, which it did. And it continues to meet that. The only thing holding it up is this vote on Friday, which everybody is going to have all eyes on it. Traditional finance, Bitcoiners, all alike are watching this because of how drastic this thing can change. But there's something a little fishy about MSTR's holding, or who's holding MSTR, that I don't necessarily like. And I think Bitcoiners alike would agree with me here. Blackrock, Uncle Larry, Larry Fink, he's got his eyes all on MSTR here. They own 5% of the entire company. Right? Now, why is that necessarily a bad thing? It's not the worst, right? These big guys, these big players, they come in, they own large portions of these companies. But BlackRock has their own Bitcoin ETF. BlackRock doesn't necessarily own 5% of, Beyond Meat or any of these other guys. BlackRock is owning 5% of this to get a more of a proxy to that Bitcoin exposure. Now, what did we just see here fairly recently? We saw Intel. 10% of Intel get bought up by the United States government. Now, publicly traded company, been along with the ride for a while. We've seen Donald Trump, Eric Trump, Donald Trump Jr., all of these guys talk with Michael Saylor and be very close to him. Look, I'm going to dive into where I think that could be potentially going here in a minute. But it showed that an investor, when it requires more than 5%, they have to issue this following, right? So BlackRock did this early last year. And so while Strategy has been doing these perpetual stock offerings and essentially tapping into that $300 trillion bond market, everybody's been looking at them to buy more and more Bitcoin. And we've even had, sovereign wealth funds, pension funds, everybody using MSTR to get Bitcoin as a proxy. Right? So when you're getting these kind of things, like, hey, you know what? We're not going to buy Bitcoin necessarily, but we're going to get it from MSTR. It's got to raise your eyebrows just oh so slightly here. Because, hey, when these guys are buying Bitcoin and it keeps bolstering its Bitcoin war chest, right? These are the headlines you're seeing. It changes his name to Strategy and it just keeps on buying Bitcoin. But who owns Strategy, right? Vanguard. Vanguard is another big owner of Strategy. It's the top investor in MSTR. And everybody's like, oh, Vanguard owns it. Should you own it too? But what is something unique about Vanguard compared to everybody else? Vanguard emerged as the largest institutional holder, representing 8.55% ownership in the company. Even though it does not like Bitcoin. Vanguard has previously criticized Bitcoin, the executives calling it speculative, the executives being extremely bearish, competitors like Blackrock and Fidelity launching these Bitcoin ETFs, and Vanguard notably abstained from the crypto rush. The firm maintained its stance even as Bitcoin reached its all-time high. Vanguard CEO recently reaffirmed that the company doesn't make bets on speculative assets such as Bitcoin. Yet, they are the top institutional investor in MSTR. Makes you think here, folks. I wonder why we have such backlash on all this from Vanguard, even though we have this. Now, their quiet accumulation of MSTR shares suggests Vanguard may be gaining indirect exposure while maintaining its public skepticism. Now, we're going to get into another public skeptic here in a second. But the thing about MSTR that is very unique is that they are not selling their Bitcoin at all. They're not doing it. And neither do you. You don't have to do it, folks. If you go to saltlending.com/green-candle, you can borrow against your Bitcoin today. You don't have to sell your Bitcoin to unlock some of this. They're giving you guys an exclusive offer, so you have to make sure you go to this website to do it. They've got some of the best rates at 8.95%, 12 months, 70% LTV, no prepayment fees. You can name it. They got it. They've even got a no liquidation solution, which is absolutely clutch. So you don't have to worry about potentially losing your corn on the brinks of potentially a big bull run. If we get a little bit of a drawdown, you don't have to worry about losing all of it. And they don't rehypothecate. That's the biggest thing. So go to saltlending.com/green-candle. And do that quick because we got Dub in the chat saying the price action on MSTR doesn't seem to indicate it's going to be added to the S&P. We'll see. I think that everybody's doing this wait and see approach. I think everybody is like essentially just waiting, right? We're seeing it down a little bit today, right? I mean, everybody's been looking and yelling at me saying, hey, you know what? The S&P 500, MSTR, these guys, you know, they're not looking at they're looking at Bitcoin going all-time highs, and they're like, where the hell is MSTR? Well, I mean, let's face the facts, folks. If MSTR gets in, 26% of all money that's flown in is just passive. So people would be passively investing in it. And everybody seems to be bending the knee to Bitcoin. I mean, we saw it with Vanguard, right? Vanguard is now buying up MSTR. They're like, oh, is it a good buy? Bloomberg, one of the biggest guys on planet Earth, they're looking at this and saying it is a good buy. We've got Bitcoin analysts from all of this, right? Bloomberg says MSTR meets all the criteria to be added to the S&P 500. Almost every analyst lists the stock as a buy, and yet because Bitcoin is dumping. When Bitcoin was running, they were dumping it too. And reality is hey, JPMorgan is bending the knee to Bitcoin. And we had Jamie Dimon, the biggest Bitcoin skeptic, watch what they do, not what they say, literally do the same exact thing to what Vanguard is doing here, right? I mean, look at this chart. I mean, we are seeing the holdings of MSTR from JPMorgan skyrocket in flight, absolutely take off. I mean, look at that thing. It's gone exponential and it's not slowing down by any means. So when we have Jamie Dimon and JPMorgan now, okay, hey, you know what? I don't believe in Bitcoin, yada, yada, yada. I believe in stable coins. I think that's the way to go. Come on, Jamie. We all know you really love Bitcoin. We know that you're eventually going to bend the knee to it. But the reality is they're just going to get their proxies in, right? So JPMorgan is allowing Bitcoin trading. They allow their customers now to get loans on Bitcoin ETFs that they have. So they're realizing that all of their customers are asking for something like this, even though they are extremely bearish in the public. Same thing with Vanguard. Vanguard has been bearish in the public eye when it comes to Bitcoin. And they're not going to change that stance by any means, but they're going to slowly start to bend the knee to this. And now, why are they going to bend the knee? Or are they just using MSTR as a proxy to get some of that Bitcoin exposure? Now, this is where I think it gets a little bit fishy here. Because of what I lined out earlier, we had Intel potentially get 10%, or not potentially, the United States government buy 10% of all Intel stock, right? Own 10% of the company. Now that's government owned. That's a socialist regime. The United States wants to buy 1 million Bitcoin. Now, by the time they get all of this passed, for those of you guys who continue to watch this channel, please hit that subscribe button. But you guys know I talked with Mark Moss not too long ago, and I love how he lined it out. There's 50-year cycles. First 10 years, it's plebs, the retail. Second 10, it's institutions. Third 10, it's governments. Fourth 10, it's, used as a medium of exchange. And then the last 10, it's going to be a unit of account. But prior to all of this, right, I think that we're going to see Bitcoin exchanging hands here pretty soon when it comes to these institutions, right? What's the best way that a government can buy Bitcoin? Well, it buys 10% of MSTR, which is probably, cheaper than buying 10% of, or, a million Bitcoin right at the top, especially when MSTR, they could just issue more stock, right? So, I mean, we've got over 125 of you guys across X and YouTube. I know I'm coming to you guys during the drive-by time, coming home from work, but it looks like it's just me and Dub's the one keeping the chat alive. I appreciate you guys coming in. Let me know what you guys think of all this. Do you think that there's a potential to see what we've got going on here, right? Because we've got Jamie Dimon saying the bank, oh, we're going to let the clients buy Bitcoin. But he's also, look at this, the criticism dates back. He said there's in 2023, he said it's the only true use case is for drugs and criminals, drug traffickers, money laundering, tax avoidance, all of these criminals, right? He's he's kept to stable coins. He says, oh, stable coins is cool. But Bitcoin, no, it's not the best. Right? But it's like I said, watch what they do, not what they say. He's saying all these things, and then they're doubling and tripling down on MSTR. I mean, good golly. These buys are astronomical. And so the potential of having a proxy like MSTR buy Bitcoin for the government, well, that is going to be very interesting. I got Doge Pack in the chat here asking if I think it's going to go to a new all-time high. Are you talking about MSTR or Bitcoin? Because I think if MSTR comes in the S&P 500, if they get passed tomorrow, I do think so. But it's not financial advice, of course, folks. I think we are going up. I mean, either way, this is positive because it is keeping all eyes on MSTR and Bitcoin this weekend. Now, if it doesn't, it's going to make just as big of a news story because Bitcoin's still at 110,000. We need Bitcoin in order for Bitcoin to fail. I think it needs to get under that 95,000 mark. We had punter Jeff line that out here so eloquently not too long ago when they said that there was a 91% chance to join the S&P 500. Now, if they do it, it's discretionary. But the reason could simply come down to human discretion, which is very interesting, right? Because in a world where Bitcoin is essentially taking the power out of the humans, well, the humans seemingly have this power, at least right here, right? They have the power to keep MSTR out of that S&P 500, even though it meets all of the criteria. And we saw some of the best metrics out of any company from MSTR in their last earnings. You guys know I love to show this screenshot that Preston Pish got not too long ago from the strategy earnings call. So make sure you guys are smoking that like and hitting that subscribe button for me. But the estimated net income is 13. Yet its market cap is 96. And its PE multiple is 495th. That shows an extremely undervalued stock. Look, it's something that Warren Buffett would be salivating over. Salivating. But it's crazy that he still isn't up to speed with just this yet. Maybe he doesn't understand the true financial revolution that we have afoot. But I think there's a couple different vehicles that people need to start using and taking a very close eye on. One of those, I think, is mining. I don't think enough people are getting in on the mining game. I've got a miner set up. I had to go with Simple Mining. You could go to simplemining.io/greencandle. They will give you guys a free 7-day trial. All you got to do is just go and sign up here today, schedule a call with the boys, and they'll sign you guys up free 7-day trial. They'll also give you guys, listeners of this channel, a free repairs for an entire year. So you don't have to take care of your Bitcoin miner. All you got to do is just sign up with these guys. And then look, you know what? Free repairs, free 7-day trial. You can try it all, folks. Speaking of trying it all, I think you guys should start taking your health seriously. I've been told I look great here lately. I know you guys in the chat always tell me how great I look, how handsome of a fella I am. But you could go to based.getchroma.co or the link down in the description. They accept Bitcoin for all this stuff, but they're blue light blockers. I'm rocking them all the time. My eyes are killing me these days. But they've got these great golden glow glasses. I'm rocking them now. They've got some balls for entropy. They've got the purple wand, the D-Light, some of these other things, the Sky Portal Mini. But I use something, a little different here. Right? So, I mean, if you go to getchroma.co, you'll find some of their other products as well. There's Sky Portal. I've got one of these. I use one of these during the night. The red portal, I use that at night and it's like increased my sleep like crazy. I can't recommend this enough for you guys. I want to get one of these Sky Portals for the day because, I mean, these blue lights are just killing you. As much as I love wearing these glasses, as soon as I take them off, I can feel it, which means they're working. So the inclusion in that S&P 500 here is good, right? It's all good and plenty for what we could potentially see from Saylor and crew. But the thing that we all have to watch out for going forward, folks, is the United States government. If they continue to keep buying up more of these companies, right? If they continue to, essentially buying up the S&P 500, and then, hey, you know what? All right, we're not going to do it. We're going to have the likes of Blackrock and others start to do it for us. Well, the connection between Wall Street and the government is just a little too hairy for me. I really just don't. I would rather not see all that. And I mean, Saylor is using financial engineering to essentially unlock as much money as he possibly can to buy Bitcoin. And I'm not faulting him for that. This is what the strategy that we've seen is genius. This is why we've seen so many companies pop up. And we have literally, a full Satoshi through these 184 publicly traded companies. And I mean, we've seen everybody take notice of this. Like Wells Fargo's even saying it, right? And he said, hey, you know what? Coinbase got into the S&P 500. This is what Wells Fargo was saying when Coinbase got into the S&P 500. They said, Strategy's effort to pioneer into the global equity markets, the bond market, the 300 trillion bond market, is the most unsung hero of the 2025 story. And then, not even just the $300 trillion bond market, also looking at, the $145 trillion global equity fixed income market. And it's all being liquidated through this financial repression, not a question of if it looks for a new home. It's a question of where does it go? So these $300 trillion global bond market, $145 trillion fixed income market, these markets are all coming towards Bitcoin. And MSTR unlocked all of that. What I have the biggest worry is just, when you see, Eric Trump and Michael Saylor, Eric Trump getting in on all of these companies, and he's trying to implement the Michael Saylor strategy abroad. So he's going to be getting very, very close with MSTR. Look, like I said, I'm not 100% the biggest bear in the world on MSTR. I think it's going to be a great company. I own a little bit of it, full disclosure. But I mean, what we're seeing is the potential of these guys to continue to then, hey, look at Eric Trump and Michael Saylor, this picture here. Eric Trump has tweeted all of this. Two friends, one passion. So everybody was like, oh, you know what? We'll have a Bitcoin strategic reserve really here. It'll be all good and plenty. But what I think is a little scary here is that the U.S. is waiting for so long to buy this Bitcoin. And, we see things like Bo Hines leaving. We see a lot of, underlying cracks, I will call it, in this market. And because all these cracks are just seeping through just oh so slightly, there's a good chance that, I would say it's not, there is a chance that strategy could be used as a proxy for the United States government here going forward. I want to be detailing it all. So make sure you guys are hitting that subscribe button, smoking that like Cheech and Chong. Thank you guys all for coming in the chat, and I'll catch you guys all at the next one.